So, Belinda, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of Raspberry Sky's Straight Talking series. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you, Sally?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. I'm delighted to introduce you to Belinda Steward, Business Unit Director at Greene King. So, let me just give an overview of Greene King, Belinda, if I may, before we start. So, Greene King is the country's leading pub retailer and has 2,700 pubs, restaurants and hotels across the UK, with brands that we would have heard of like Chef and Brewer, Farmhouse Inns, Hungry Horse, Greene King Inns, Lock, Fine, etc. And you, not you, but Greene King run 1,700 pubs yourselves and employ 38,000 people. So a really big entity. Belinda, your doors closed in March. Overnight, your business came to almost a complete standstill, with the vast majority of your team being furloughed. Talk us through how that felt, and as a management team, what you did.
So you're right. I mean, we got the news at the same time as the rest of the country did at about 5:10 p.m. on the Friday that pubs were closing that evening. So we had about 5 hours notice to close our 1,700 pubs. We'd obviously planned that at some stage it might happen, but yeah, it was a very quick process. And I think the next 2 weeks were a total whirlwind as we literally and physically closed the pubs. So we had our management team on board to do what they needed to do to basically close up and either board up where we didn't have people living in, or close the pubs for good. So I suppose the first 2 weeks were a bit of a whirlwind. And then we were faced with the reality of not knowing when we were going to reopen. I don't think anyone anticipated it would be 12 weeks or so before we were reopening. So we had to get into a routine pretty quickly. We got to know teams very, very well. We spent more time sitting at our kitchen tables like I am now in front of a screen. But we focused around the reopening plans and getting a cross-functional working team together on 15 work streams. So even though we didn't know the date or the conditions under which we would reopen,
Straight away.
We did. We planned it straight away, and we knew that it'd be much harder to reopen than it was to close down.
You know, because you didn't know what the reopening government requirement would be. So did you work on those different scenarios?
Yeah, we did. I guess we were fortunate that we worked with the industry bodies and the trade associations to help draft the guidelines for the government. So we had an input, therefore a bit of a foresight, I guess, into what could happen. And we also looked at what's happening in other countries in the world. Our owners are Hong Kong based, and therefore with Asia coming out of this sooner than we were able to get some insights from that. So yeah, we did scenario planning, but we also had to look at things like, how do you remove beer that's going out of date from cellars? And we have underground cellars, as everybody does. When the beer drops down normally in the barrels, it's full and it goes down a ramp. You never take full barrels normally. So, a lot of planning on that and everything else that we had to do. So for some things we had to have scenario plannings in case of different outcomes. But yep, we worked through them, 15 different work streams, working on twice a week calls. That as we ramp up now to reopening, daily calls, just to get those pubs back and open and welcoming our guests back in.
Let's talk about the reopening, because you've not had a great deal of notice that the reopening is happening on can happen on the 4th of July. So when that announcement first came out, it was a 2-meter social distancing rule. So how did you look at, whether that was commercially viable or whether you could open all your pubs? What was the process?
We'd planned around 2 meters, so we looked at the commercial viability and actually the physical ability to open our pubs. With 1,700 pubs, we've got all shapes and sizes and all ages. In my part of the business, some date back 500-600 years, and they certainly they were not built with social distancing in mind. So the 2 meter bit, in terms of how many tables and covers we'd had to remove, obviously we anticipated no vertical drinking. So we planned for 2 meters. Then when the guidelines came out saying 1 meter plus, that is an opportunity to open a few more. But we've taken the decision that we're going to open on the 2 meter ruling, and then see how that goes.
Okay.
Then open a second phase at 1 meter when we've kind of got the first phase open.
Kind of to test it out and see kind of how it goes. One thing that you do have on your website is you talk about your pub safe. Do you want to just take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think, one of our guiding principles as we went through this process was ensuring the welfare of our team and looking after our team. We know that if we look after our team, they'll look after our customers. And Pub Safe was something that was our way of showing that in line with the government guidelines that we were anticipating, but also to make sure that our teams felt reassured that we were looking after them. So the 5 Pub Safe, as you said, you can see on our website. But things like reduced contact through use of Order and Pay app, and obviously encouraging contactless pay where possible, and having a PubSafe monitor on our shifts to make sure that we're following through with the requirements around cleaning and sanitizing, and then having that one person each shift who is responsible for ensuring that we're doing everything we can to keep our team safe, and then in turn keep our customers safe.
So have you done a major training initiative across the sites to educate your employees in terms of what good looks like?
Yeah, we have. So everybody, including myself, including our CEO, every single employee has to go through a PubSafe training module. And I say has to. Actually, it's really interesting to go through it, and it brings home our responsibilities, and the responsibilities that we all have, be it working or coming into the pubs. So we've gone through that with a video and with a test at the end, which is always something that's I know I passed. But yeah, so we've done that for every employee. So before they come back and start their first shift, everybody has to complete that.
What would you say as a takeaway from this video? What would be a key learning for you, having gone through this experience, that perhaps could be shared with other hotels or restaurants that are opening?
There's a couple of things that have stood us in good stead and makes me feel really proud to be part of Greene King, but also makes me feel confident that we're doing everything we can for our teams. Firstly, communication. From the very start, we've communicated constantly with our teams. We've included them in our decisions. We've actively listened to them when they've had concerns or comments or thoughts about how we can best open. So communication has been brilliant. And again, I mentioned pub quizzes. We're experts in pub quizzes. We've done more of them with our teams in the last 12 weeks than I think I've ever done pub quizzes. I think secondly, the ability to be agile. And I guess the question that we should pose ourselves is, why are we only agile in a crisis? Shouldn't we always be agile? And I think we've learned that agility is a way to overcome anything. And thirdly, the ability to be vulnerable, and leaders in the business showing vulnerability. So I haven't worn makeup for 12 weeks.
So today.
And I would never have gone to work without makeup, without my kind of, my armor on. But I think it just shows that we're all human, we're all normal. We may have titles, but actually we're all in this together. And seeing some of my colleagues homeschooling their kids, as well as working, I'm in awe of how they do that. So I think it's brought everything down to a much more personal level. And I think, the one thing that we need to take away from this is retaining that and making sure that, being honest, transparent, communicating with our teams, staying agile, but vulnerability is also a good thing.
So are all your pubs opening on the 4th of July?
Well, interesting. Obviously, we were waiting for the date. We were in anticipation of the date, and we finally got the date. And we went out to our teams, and we've been talking to them about the 4th. We've been working to the 4th for, well, pretty much as early as we had an inkling of that date. The 4th is obviously a Saturday. Football has started again now, and there's a lot of games happening. And we know how amazing this weather has been. The feedback we were getting from our teams were, of course, they want to open. Of course, they can't wait to welcome their guests back in. But to open on a Saturday that could be really hot might not be the safest way of doing it for them.
It's a severe ramp up potentially, huh?
Well, the pent up demand, we see it already. The pent up demand for a drink in a pub. We feel it ourselves, let alone everybody else. So we listen to our teams, and in line with Pub Safe, we've made the decision that the first phase of our reopening will be on the 6th, on Monday the 6th.
Right. Well, look, Belinda, thank you so much for taking part in the RaspberrySky Straight Talking series. I wish you every success from the 6th of July onwards. I'm sure it will be, and I very much look forward to meet you in a pub very soon to have a drink or two.
Absolutely. Can't wait for it, Sally. Cannot wait.